I am here to say that this is real. People are dying. It's really affecting our younger generation, especially with the porn, the masturbation on the sex side.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics today, and that is shame. You know, our fuck shame motto. If you've followed us or listened to any of these podcasts for probably just 2 or 3 episodes, you've heard me talk about the F shame idea. And today we've got Brianne Davis, the host of the Secret Life podcast, who's going to talk about shame. And what I love about it is we're going to talk about shame in the context of sex addiction, love addiction, intimacy disorders, and things of that nature. Now, the amazing thing about it is oftentimes these disorders are associated more, especially sex addiction, with men. So we're going to talk a lot about the shame around that. And I want you to kind of dig in deeply. I really believe between the digitization of porn and the incredible access that we have to it right now, we're developing easier and easier paths towards essentially being able to intimately bypass your need to connect with other people, because you can kind of get what you want without needing to do the work of intimacy. And obviously, you know, Sophie and I are so big on the deep connection and radical transparency and figuring out communication and intimate conversation to be able to talk together. And Brianne and I go deep into that discussion. Plus, you know, she was from she worked in the Hollywood industry for a while, so the entertainment industry. And so always get fun stories out of that. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think there are always more and more ways for us to dig into where's the shame hiding deep inside of us that is holding us back from being the best, most transparent, most elevated version of ourselves. Today's podcast will help break through some of that for you. Check it out. We'll be back after the break. See you on the other side.
If you know us, you know that we love wellness products that actually work. That's why we're so excited to partner with Somavedic. Their frequency therapy solution comes in the form of a globe that emits this beautiful light made with precious stone and metals. And these glowing globes are energy amplifiers that create a field to protect our cells from the EMF that's transmitted through all the technology that surrounds us.
Wow, babe, good job. I'm the one with the PhD here. And for those who don't know, EMF stands for electric and magnetic fields. And I got to tell you, I used to be a skeptic when it comes to this stuff, but we have this thing set up in our bedroom. And to be completely honest, I haven't slept better than I have in the last 2 weeks. It's insane. These crystal orbs, they form a field within your room or space so that you're not as negatively affected by all the technologies that's given off these frequencies. I mean, if you look in our room, it's from the phones to the laptops to the TVs to the Sonos speakers. We're constantly surrounded.
Yeah, and it makes us feel so much better to sleep well, knowing that we're protecting our bodies and our minds. This therapy helps not only with sleep, but also mental clarity, focus, to ease anxiety, and improve cell regeneration.
And just for listening, you're going to get 10% off of these amazing products by visiting somavedic.com/discount/ignited and using the code ignited, all caps. I'm going to repeat that one more time. You're going to visit Somavedic, SOMAVEDIC.com/discount/all caps IGNTD, and then just enter our code IGNTD for ignited, and you get 10% off these beautiful, amazing devices. Enjoy. All right, everybody, we are back with Brianne Davis. You know from the origin of the Ignited podcast how much we love talking about intimacy and the kind of issues that can come up for a lot of people around intimacy, and especially around sex addiction and things of that nature. So we're going to dive into that really, really deeply today. Hey, Brianne, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. You got your vaccine shots. You're safe. We're all good here.
Yeah, trying my best over here. Trying my best.
I love it. Love it. So you have done so much work, right? You've lived so many different lives. You are living so many different lives. Wife, mom, and you've been in entertainment. Even you've been in multiple roles. So both behind the camera, in front of the camera. And I want you to tell our people a little bit as your journey came up. How did you even get to this point where talking about sex addiction, love addiction, and all those things became part of your life?
Well, yeah, I've been in the entertainment business for 20 years. I've, been in Jarhead, Synchronicity, Remember the Titans, Prom Night, then shows like Six, Lucifer, Casual, True Blood, all the CSIs, pretty much any show I've been in at least one of the episodes. And I'm a working actor. I've lived in LA. I started my career when I was in Atlanta and I was a lot younger. But when I found out that I had this addiction with sex and love, it was like the world dropped. And I was never going to tell anybody. I mean, I told my family and my close friends, but I was never going to break my anonymity. I was not interested in being a spokesperson for sex and love addiction, especially as a woman. There's so much shame and stigma. But what happened, I hit 10 years of recovery. I have 11 years right now in sex and love addiction. And this overwhelming feeling came over me. I just saw younger and younger generations coming in, 19-year-olds having trouble connecting, a lot of suicide. A couple of my friends died from this disease. One was murder, one went to jail, one's in jail right now. And it was just like this higher power God thing came over me. It was like, no, you need to be of service in a bigger level. So I started speaking all over the world. I started sponsoring women all over the world. I wrote this article for HuffPost coming out as a sex and love addict. And I have to tell you, the day that came out last March, I thought the world was going to end. Literally, it was 3 days before the world shut down. But I was like, I woke up that morning. I'm like, what am I doing? Am I going to ruin my career?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to know my secret. Like, even though I have no shame and stigma, it's not something you're like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm a sex and love addict. It's not something you talk about. And I thought the world was going to end and everybody was going to call me. And I have to tell you, nothing happened. It was like, get out of your ego, get out. This is not about you. Nobody cares. You're like this small on the planet. But what did happen is it got 2 million hits in weeks. And so many people reached out to me saying, thank you for speaking up. Thank you for being a woman and saying that this is an issue. Thank you for talking about the stigma behind having this addiction. And society really amplifies sex and love addiction. So I'm just being of service now. That's what I'm doing. So that's why I came out and I wrote the book and everything.
I love it. So much to unpack. So
I know. I tried to give you the Cliff Note version.
Love it. No, and Sophie, my wife, had the exact same experience when she wrote an article for initially women's health and then other avenues of what it's like being married to a sex addict. And we were all afraid, like, oh shit, let's just watch out, back up and just see if everybody just cancels us and writes us off. And what ended up happening is a lot of couples, a lot of men, a lot of women reaching out and saying, we're in a similar situation. Thank you so much for writing. A lot of women talking to her about, we didn't think there was any hope on the other side of this, and finding it in the story. And so that is a very, very powerful part of it, is being of service and showing people. I mean, the way we talk about it at Ignited is something called radical transparency, right? It's the idea that you walk around, you see a lot of people living these lives that you believe you know something about, but behind the scenes, there's oftentimes, if not always, a lot happening that you just don't know anything about. Yeah. And what's happened in the world is we've gotten used to just believing that everybody else, the Joneses, the Smiths, whoever's living across the street,
life, the beautiful, don't see behind the facade.
100%, that it's all real. And so you have these problems at home and inside your head. and you think to yourself, nobody else has these problems. Look at them. They're living these amazing lives. And sex addiction is definitely one of them. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, because I have some thoughts and opinions about this, and I want to talk to you about your thoughts and opinions about this being in recovery, about what sex and love addiction even is, the differences between them, etc. Yeah. So, you know, I was an SAA member for a number of years, probably about maybe like 2 to 3 years. I'm not in any specific program right now, and I know that has a lot to do with more my version of recovery in general, and so I'm totally open to and would love to hear about your journey. But it was definitely a useful place to walk into to reduce shame, because you're right, especially as a man, by the way. When you tell people sex addiction is your problem, I think rape and pedophilia are sort of the first two things that pop into people's heads. We can talk about what that is for women.
Cheaters is another one.
Oh, and cheating is absolutely part of my story. So that's right.
Mine too. Don't worry.
No, yeah, and it's like, and so it's almost like, because that was part of my story, I was willing to take the blame and full acceptance of that. But there's this notion of predatory sex addiction that is very, very common, and that was maybe the shame and stigma that I felt. But no, that was 11 years ago is when I started dealing in a real way with sex addiction. So right around the same time, it sounds like.
Wow, yeah, we have almost the same journey. But I love to say, here's how I identify sex and love addiction, how I break them up. So sex addiction is where you're addicted to the sexual act, not so much the person. It's the power and control you have with the sexual act. So we're talking, cheating, multiple partners at one time, one night stands, going on the app, swiping left and right, looking for that perfect hit, that partner to get that sexual high from. And then the love addiction side, I like to say, is where we're addicted to a specific person or a fantasy of what a person should be. So there's a lot of flirting, intriguing, going back to unavailable people, trying to get them to love you. And the beautiful thing about both of these is they're usually very connected. One person can swing one way and be a sex addict and can swing the other way and go after that unavailable person. It's not really about the sex. It's about getting your self-worth, your self-love. And how I did that in my journey is I love power and control over every single person in my life. Like I used to say, if you just do what I said, like the world would be amazing, like so ego and narcissistic. And here's the thing, you can't control anybody or have power over anyone. So it's this illusion if I get this person to show up for me like I want them to, and I use my sexuality to then trap them. Then when they started falling in love with me or, getting connected to me, it was too intimate. Like I could not connect sex and intimacy. Sex for me equaled, dirty secret. No one talks about, because they don't even talk about sex when you're younger and show a healthy marriage and what a healthy sexuality looks like.
Yeah.
And then, so if I loved you, I didn't want to have sex with you. It's too much. It's too close. You see me. I don't want to be seen. I want to wear a mask. I want to become, what my partner envisions me to be. So it was untangling that. So the beautiful thing is a lot of men I know are love addicts and they don't talk about it. And that's why I decided to say, here's someone that's in recovery. I'm married now. I have a kid. This disease doesn't run my life. I'm not some man that got caught cheating and I'm using sex addiction as an excuse. I am here to say that this is real. People are dying. It's really affecting our younger generation, especially with the porn, the masturbation on the sex side. So
100%.
That's like how I look at sex and love addiction.
Love it. So I want to talk about, you talked about the two different manifestations of it. And to me, they both originate, you mentioned this word a lot, so I want to dig into it. Yeah. An intimacy problem, right? Yes. And so for me, regardless, and by the way, I think this actually ends up parlaying into alcohol and drug addictions as well, there's an intimacy problem. And what I mean by that is we generally aren't good at, we're not taught how to, and we're not comfortable getting very intimate with somebody else. What do I mean by intimate? I mean, sharing our fears, sharing our discomforts, not having to pretend even for the people closest to us, right? So I know from an early age, like I felt like I had to be somebody else for other people to love me and appreciate me. And just the way my head works, I never really felt like I measured up. And so I would have to wear masks originally when I was, 7, 8 years old, literally very, very young, to pretend like I fit in and pretend like I was cool. And then at some point I found alcohol and drugs. But if I think about it, really, when I found alcohol, the reason was really simple. I was at a sleepaway camp, hanging out with boys and girls at the end of the night. I felt so awkward around other girls. It was crazy. And I never felt like I measured up to the guys. And when somebody handed me a bottle of vodka and I drank some 15, 20 minutes later, I was good.
Yeah, you're numb. You numb yourself. You numb your feelings.
Yeah, and I could talk to a girl and talk and not be nervous and anxious and kind of feel like I was being myself. Now, I didn't actually fix my anxiety. I just kind of put a Band-Aid on it.
It's a Band-Aid.
100%. But to me, all of these things originate from my discomfort at really being myself and being authentic and honest. And so for me, it was sex because I found porn. And, here's the thing. Porn is going to end up delivering. I'm never going to make myself awkward in front of porn. I can't say the wrong things and not get some, right? And so in some ways, it kind of served that role. And the fantasy would step in and I wouldn't have to solve the real problem, which was like, how do you talk to women and get familiar with them and get comfortable and be able to get intimate? And so I never developed the intimacy muscle. Literally, like, I was engaged and my wife-to-be, who we're now married with 3 kids, but kept finding these things that I'm doing with random people. Initially, it was actual skin-to-skin contact. Eventually, it all went online.
Yeah.
But the idea was, look, we just had a fight. I don't really know. I feel bad about myself. Let me go fix it with porn or some random woman from somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, it's a cycle of shame. I mean, you're already feeling shameful, then you just say, I'll just do it again anyways. But I don't even think it lies even deeper than that. I think when you put drugs and alcohol, it's not even fear of intimacy. It's literally, self-love, self-worth, fear of abandonment. All that stuff lies under any addiction. And that's what I found out. I remember when I was getting my 6-month chip and this guy came in and he said, I can quit heroin, but I can't quit her. And it was such a light bulb moment. It's like falling in love is the best high in the world. It's better than heroin. It's better than cocaine. It's literally every endorphin is like ignited. And I think a lot of us as addicts and even normies are addicted to this idea of love fixing us, somebody fixing us, someone coming to us and making us whole. And I'm here to say, no one's going to fix you. No one's going to make you feel whole. We're all flawed humans. My husband cannot fix me. Some rando guy on the street cannot flirt with me and give my self-worth. That comes from within. And that's why I wrote the book Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, to walk people through that. My mom just read it and she started crying and she said, for the first time, I understand your disease and I've done some of the things you've done. It was such a
Okay. Here's what I love about that exchange, and I want to ask you how you feel about this, because I know what I'm about to bring up might be a little controversial for you, and that's all good.
It's okay. Let's do it.
I don't think there's really a difference between addicts and normies. I think the only difference is how bad it got. And
I think I agree. I think everybody has an ism, and I think we whack-a-mole the isms. If something starts getting out of control, a normie will like whack-a-mole it to there. But yes, I kind of agree. Everybody has an ism. Everybody goes somewhere not to feel, whether it's swiping on Instagram, getting likes, whether it's eating that extra pieces of pizza, even though you're full, but you're like
having that drink every night after you get off of work, whatever it is, right? Like, we all have coping strategies. What I think is different about the people who end up in rooms or end up in rehab is a couple of things. First of all, we ended up getting so good at relying on one coping strategy that it became so obvious to everybody that that's a problem. Like, if the only way you're dealing with your anxiety, stress, and what you hate about your life and about yourself is by drinking, you're gonna have to drink a ton at some point, and then everybody's gonna look at you and go, "You have a drinking problem." You don't have a drinking problem. You have a life and self-esteem problem.
Yeah, you have a life on life terms problem, is what I like.
Yeah, right. And like
life on life terms.
Yeah, and if you have a hard time getting connected intimately with people, and you're hooking up with randos or you're online, you're doing porn all the time or whatever that is, if that's the only way you get your self-esteem or a primary way, it's going to lead to a lot of problems. You're going to end up staying at home too much. You're going to literally hurt yourself physically. You're going to put yourself in risky situations. But what ends up happening to people like us who end up in rooms or rehabs is our life depends on that coping strategy, because if we don't have that thing, we feel so shitty about who we are. We can't wake up the next day. So when people go, hey, you got to stop doing that, we go, yeah, that makes sense in my head. That sounds rational. But if I stop doing it, I'm going to be a ball of anxiety and stress crying on the ground. And I can't let you see me like that. So I'm going to keep trying to find, and that's the whack-a-mole kind of game for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, my withdrawal, I don't know about yours from your sex addiction, but it was 9 months. I cried every single day for 9 months, crawling at the carpet. You know, I had this one moment where I was sitting on my bed and the pain that was coming out of my body, my mouth was open. It was like an exorcism. I felt like this snake, and I looked at the clock and 45 minutes had passed. I was just like, couldn't breathe. My throat was closing up because—
Were you already married?
No, here's the thing. I am with the same man that I got in the program with. We've been together 16 years. We're married now. We're married. I never wanted to get married.
Parallel stories. It's kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
Sophie and I have been together 16 years.
What? Oh my God. That's
crazy.
So great. Yeah, we've been together 16 years. And that's what I love to say. You don't go through this program to find the perfect partner. There is no perfect partner. And this one man said from New York one time, which I loved, he said, look at the most beautiful person in the world, and I can tell you someone's sick of fucking them. Because that high of falling in love, the first love, I thought, and I don't know about you, but I want to ask you, I thought from a very early age that the falling in love feeling was what made someone your soulmate, which I don't believe exists. But what makes someone like that has to stay for 16 years. I never got to see a healthy relationship. My parents didn't model a healthy relationship. I never saw them say loving words. They didn't hold hands. They didn't even sleep in the same bed. So I grew up as a latchkey kid watching movies, and my favorite movie, I want to hear your favorite movie, but mine was Romeo and Juliet. So I remember watching it and seeing Michael White's butt and being like, oh my God, that is the best butt at 6 years old. Like, I shouldn't be watching this. And then I remember at the end that one or two people were willing to die for the other. That someone was going to drink some poison, someone was going to stab themselves. Like, that had to be.
You're like, that's what I want. Yeah,
I was like, I want that passionate. I want someone to be willing to die for me, which is insane.
You know what I love about that? First of all, and that's such a good example of how we set up these ideals that are just not realistic. Like, they both died. They both died. So you're like,
they only met for 2 days, people. 2 days. I didn't even realize that. They knew like, if somebody called me and said, I met this guy, our parents won't let us to be together. It needs to be a secret. And
I've known him for 2 days.
For 2 days, and I'm going to go drink some poison and act like I'm dead or stab myself for him because we can't be together. I'd be like, you need to go on an institution. Like, this is not okay.
So 100%. So, you know, what's funny is the movies that I looked at were like the Ferris Bueller's Day Off and those, which was like the guy who got the girls and was so cool that nothing slipped by him, like that kind of a thing. And that was exactly the image that I kept trying to create in my head. And what I love about what you're talking about is now as adults being through what we've been through, we can admit these things and go, that's fucking ridiculous. It's like, so I was a drug dealer in a past life. And I remember, like, Scarface was one of my favorite movies. Now, when I got arrested by a SWAT team, I was sitting on a couch with a massive Scarface. Remember those like wall size with a massive Scarface poster under me. And you know what I realized when I was in jail? That guy in Scarface is a dick who like fucks over everybody he knows and then gets murdered by his friends because he's such a piece of shit. So,
and that's what you were modeling your
my
life
ideal. You know? And I think what you're bringing up is so important for people to realize. It's your life internally is never going to look like the movies. It's never going to look like a book. It's going to look like your version. And I think a lot of us are really uncomfortable with that because we in society in general has these standards kind of built up for us. And we believe them. We end up believing that that's what life is supposed to look like. And I think you're so right that the origin of self-loathing and worthlessness and helplessness and all that come from I'm not measuring up to that. Well, nobody measures up to that. There is
Yeah,
no
because it's
human.
not real. It's not real. Nobody in the movies talks about paying the bills, how to work out finances, picking up dog poop. And I was never interested in that. I was like, that does not sound like fun. That sounds boring. But that's what real life is. And now the problem is, and what I'm seeing and why I'm speaking out is this younger generation is modeling their sexuality off that porn that's available 24/7 on someone's, game box. And it's they said it's an epidemic. It's a bigger epidemic than opiates. They said that's how it's going to change humanity as we know it this next generation.
Yeah, look, here's the thing, right? We're always going to be changing. The question for me is how do we give individuals support to find their true self inside, and then give them permission, celebrate, and give them space to become the best version of that? Because the other thing that I think, and this is why I really wanted to make a point of like, I don't really know that there's a difference between addicts and normies, is this. I feel like the rule, the law that we are told our whole lives is, try to be as normal as possible. Like, don't pay it outside the lines. Don't make too much noise.
Don't be too loud as a woman.
Don't be too loud.
Don't
like,
be too opinionated.
Yeah, don't try to break out of the role that you were born into. But reality, like.
But do you think, before you go on to
Please.
the next thought, do you think for men it's more like fix, be a fixer, be, the masculine, have your stuff together, don't show emotion? That's what I get
Well,
from my male friends.
For me, and like, I mean, I literally feel like I grew up in a very similar home. My parents did sleep in the same bed, but my dad apparently cheated on my mom all the time. I only knew about one of them, but nobody said "I love you." The words, literally, like the words in Hebrew are "Ani ohev otcha," and I didn't know how to say that when I had kids myself. I had to teach myself how to use those words because I never heard them at home, so it felt really strange. Right. But very emotionally kind of distant, latchkey kid, all that sort of stuff. And so none of that was modeled for me. But for men, fixing is one way to talk about it. I came from an environment where it was like achievement or doing. Yeah. It's the doing that gets you into things. So talking about shit doesn't matter, because if you're not doing anything, then that doesn't count. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was always about like, what are you doing? How busy are you? That's how you measured success. And so you try to be as normal as possible, whatever normal is for you. Every family has a different normal set of guidelines. Yeah. First of all, normal doesn't exist.
Normal doesn't exist, and neither does perfectionism. I just have to say that.
100%. So normal doesn't exist. So you're going after, again, another weird. Now it's not like a magic Hollywood version. It's some aggregate of your parents and your friends and their friends and what they think is average. But not only that, name one person in the world who wants to be average. None of us want to be average. And so what ends up happening is...
Or like unique and special. That's like the worst thing for an addict, to think they're unique and special.
Well, here's the thing. Like, average is the sum of all of us. It's like, right, if you put all of us in a bucket and kind of mash us together, that's average, right? But you are a different human being. There are experiences, there are things, there are skills you have and ways you talk and memories and things like that you bring to every conversation you have that make you you.
Yes, exactly.
I have the same. My wife has the same. All of our friends have the same. Yours as well. And I wish we got to a place where we could all just celebrate those differences a little bit and feel like we have to be less like everybody else. Because I really believe that part of the reason for me that I always felt awkward is because I tried to always match up, either to be that perfect guy or at least to not stick out. But I'm a little different, and just like everybody else around me is. And so there was a constant battle inside. And now I live my life, and I mean, it sounds like you are as well, but I live my life pretty loudly transparent. And
yeah, I mean, that's the only way, is that authenticity and just being truly who you are. But what I like to call what you're talking about is, I call it the compare and despair. It's always like you're comparing and seeing how you rate next to the whoever you're comparing yourself to, the ideal, what society puts out there. You're going to be greater than or less than. And for me, I did that all the time. And 99% of the time I came up less than. It just reinforced that self-worth, that lack of self, that was not mirrored to me at a young age.
Yeah.
So I agree that, we've been trying to fit these molds that aren't for everyone. And that creates a bunch of people walking around in this world saying, need me, fix me, want me, like give me my worth, give me my worth, give me more money, give me that car, give me that house, give me that job. I say it's
Yeah.
the disease of more. And everybody in this world right now, it feels like, unless you're like Buddha on a mountaintop, has that disease of more. Like, I want more, I'll feel better, give, you know what I mean?
I do. And here's what's interesting. So in my relationship with Sophie, now we've been on this recovery. It's so crazy. So many parallels.
I
But
know.
we've been on this part of the journey for about 11 years now. And we do want more and we're always seeking more, but it has a lot less to do with monetary things and bank account numbers and a lot more to do with the depth of our relationship. Now, here's something that's really interesting. And it's for us, this is not necessarily true for everybody else. Sophie, and we've talked about this a lot, I'm not revealing something she's never said. She was in a 5-year abusive relationship before me. So sexuality, intimacy, touch, wearing clothes that show off her amazing body, like any of that felt very unsafe because her ex would tear up her clothes, scream at her, literally like lock her in closets, which is something that's insane for me to hear about my wife now, but because she's such a powerful person. But that's the experience she had before. And so for us, the more is for Sophie and I, we're always exploring and always trying to understand how to deepen our connection and our intimacy, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
Because what we know now is out of all the people in the world, we've chosen each other. And the most important thing is that we help support each other and ourselves in becoming the best version that we can of self. And for somebody like Sophie, letting go of those traumatic bonds and hang-ups is an important part, because it always saddened me to see somebody, and she is very normal. She has my wife struggles with absolutely no addictions. Like, she could pick up anything, drop anything, she doesn't care. But what she has are these deep hang-ups around what is safe and what is not. And so how do you deal? I mean, I don't know if your husband is in the program as well, or if he struggles with any of those things, and you don't have to out him or any of that kind of stuff.
No, he's already outed himself. It's
cool.
Okay.
But one of my questions is this, because for me, there's always that tug and pull in life between, okay, we're safe now, so let's keep things safe and not rock the boat, and then self-growth and expansion, which puts you at risk sometimes. Like, you may try something, start a new conversation, have an experience that is not 100% safe, but is important for the growth of intimacy. How do you guys deal with that?
First of all, we turn everything over to a higher power. It's about, I always say the best relationship is a relationship that doesn't have any drama, that brings out the best of you. So if you're in a relationship that doesn't bring out the best of you, that's usually a warning sign. But we also focus on our own growth. I'm hitting 9 meetings a week in my Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, which before, when I started 11 years ago, I would do 1 or 2 meetings a week and 2 therapy sessions a week for 8 years. It took me a really long time to go through my 12-step. But my husband, he's been in AA for 32 years. He got sober at the age of 19, and has a decade in recovery in DA, and he was gambling, spending money. So we really keep an open communication. We talk about feelings. We have those conversations you don't want to have, where it's like, what I just felt when you said this triggered this response. I know it's not your fault, and it's hysterical, it's historical, but you have to have those conversations. You have to be willing to grow. But we were also, and we still are, committed to each other. But if I have to get healthy and we have to break up, we have to be willing to let go of each other for the better of our inner life. We both know that we will never complete each other. We both know our son doesn't complete us, that you have to be willing to walk through your own trauma and your own baggage and not put it on your partner. That is a main thing. We deal with it. Like if we're having a conversation and we can't get through it, one of the things we do is you know what, maybe I'm going to go get on a meeting. Maybe I'm going to call my sponsor. Maybe I'm going to call a trusted fellow that I can to work this out with, because we're not communicating how we need to be communicating. I think it's just really taking care of your inner life, meditating, journaling, praying to whatever God, higher power, universe. Because for me, as an addict, I feel like I'm the center of the universe and everyone revolves around me. And when I got into the program 11 years ago, I realized I'm just a speck on this planet, and that I'm here to be of service and make this world better, not be a taker, not get my needs fixed 24/7. But I think if we look to our partners to fix us, if we look to our partners to complete us, that is a recipe for disaster, because they're human, and him and I both know that. And I think we just keep that at the forefront of our mind. He cannot complete me or fix me. I cannot complete him. We are two separate people that are whole. We're whole people coming together and choosing this as a choice to be together.
Yeah, in our program, in the Ignited program, I call it T, A, or H relationships. And a T relationship is when one person is completely dependent on the other. Like this person can stand on their own, but this one would drop to the floor and bang their head. Then there's an A relationship where both people are dependent on one another. If anybody walks out, they both fall down. Yeah. And eventually there's an H relationship, which is both people stand up. They get stronger by the bond between them, right? That strengthens them, giving them a bigger base. But if something happens to that bond, if it breaks, they're both standing on their own. It may teeter a little bit, right? It's still going to hurt.
Yeah, you're still going to hurt. You're still going to get, if my husband broke up with me or we got divorced, I would be devastated, but I wouldn't be broken. That's 100%. The difference. Nobody can break me. And that's what I say. No one can leave me and I will crumble. And I couldn't say that 11 years ago. I was searching outside for anything to make me feel whole. And I think that's what you get from a program like Sex and Love Addiction. It's not finding the perfect partner. It's finding yourself finally. It's getting back to yourself.
Yeah. I don't, it's funny. I wonder if, well, I'm sure people do have this sense sometimes that there's something they could do to find the best partner. But in reality, it's always about becoming the best version of yourself that will then call in a partner that matches that. Marianne Williamson has this saying that Sophie and I love, which is that every partner will present you with a kind of like a mirror of the lessons you need to learn. And so in that way, Sophie and I do use each other a lot. And that is, we use those moments of conflict as opportunities. If we're in conflict and somebody said something to trigger somebody else, we're not being nice to one another, there's something going on, and we can we can dig it very deeply to understand what that is. And it's almost never about the other person. It's almost always about self.
It is always about self, or, it brought up something from your childhood, dealing with your parents. Usually it's that core issue with a parent or someone that they didn't give you, or it triggers you not feeling secure or feeling abandoned and all those things. But you can't abandon an adult, which I love that saying. Like, you can't, you are not a child anymore, nor do you have to act like a child, always wanting to, like, you can't abandon yourself. You have to show up for yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes somebody to remind you of all the tools that you have, because you do go back to this early trialing. So I want to talk a little bit about, living in this world. We obviously, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the whole Me Too movement, and there's been a massive shift in general about what is even considered okay in terms of relationships, not just workplace, but just like between people who might be potentially attracted to one another, or where there's an attraction from one person to another side, right? Like, wouldn't you say that whether you're talking about the industry or the world in general, there are things that were okay, or at least nobody, I shouldn't say they were okay, nobody pointed them out or nobody talked about them 10, definitely 15, 20 years ago, that now have changed so much about the way people relate to one another? So in the context of what we're talking about, I feel like whether it's sex addiction or love addiction, there were aspects of interpersonal relationships before that people just would kind of gloss over. They're like, oh, he's just being crazy. That guy I met at the club last night, he's just being crazy. Or, oh, my boss is just being weird, right? Or, oh man, that girl I met last week is just kind of going off the deep end. Now, I feel like those things have taken on a different tint because of our understanding of the damage those things can do, not just to the person who's struggling, but to the people that they end up fixating on.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can say, either within the industry or outside of it, how you see that affecting this kind of a problem, a sex and love addiction problem.
Well, I think it's, in my industry in Hollywood, I mean, it's run rampant. Sex and love addiction is rampant. Everybody, you go on a set and everybody's acting out with somebody. There's a showmance, there's inappropriate, there's people saying inappropriate things but the beautiful thing is, and I think it's out in the world also, that we now have to take accountability for what we say. We can't hide behind it was a joke. I wasn't being serious. There is accountability. And that's what I think the best thing is what you say to someone else is a profound effect. There is a ripple effect. And that's what I learned doing the program, doing my 9-step, doing my 7th and 4th step, is there is a ripple effect to your actions, your words, your behaviors. And you can't walk around in this world putting your crap on other people, acting out, replaying these roles, acting out a certain way that you thought was appropriate, making inappropriate jokes. I mean, 1 in 3 women have been sexually assaulted, and 1 in 6 men. I mean, on my podcast, Secret Life, I've had so many men come on and say they were molested. And it's like, we need to take accountability for people's actions that they are doing that affect other people. We are not children walking around, acting out what didn't happen in our childhood. And I just love the Me Too movement. And people say, but you're a sex and love addict, you're a cheater, you've done these things. Like, aren't you actually what they want to get rid of in the Me Too movement? And I say, sometimes, yes, I've done really inappropriate things. I've not acted. I've lied. I've cheated. I haven't been the best moral person, but that doesn't define who I am. I've already taken accountability. I've made my amends. I've stood up there and said, I have done these things and I have hurt you and I am sorry. And I promise never to do that to another living soul again. And if more people did that, if Harvey Weinstein stood up and said, listen, I used my power and control to get what I needed because I felt so empty. I shouldn't have done that. I need to make amends to these women. I need to take accountability instead of making excuses. It's accountability. And that's what I think the Me Too movement has brought out. And people say, we can't joke anymore and everything's not politically correct. And it's like, no, you just got to say things that weren't okay. And now you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. And it's look, it's always, I love that you brought that up. I can't joke anymore. We can't be light.
But no, listen, me going into a Starbucks, flirting with the coffee guy, giving him the impression that I'm available or interested, and then using him flirting with me to give me my self-worth. It's like me raping another person. And that's what we're doing. We're walking around raping other people's energy to fill us. And that's not okay. It's not okay for me to walk into a Starbucks and use the coffee guy to give me my self-worth and then walk out and leave him like, wait, she was just flirting with me. That intrigue, when I'm intriguing with someone and I'm not available, but I'm acting available. Like, it is not okay for us to put our needs on other people to give to us.
It's a really, really interesting thing, available or not available. What's interesting to me is this becomes such a nuanced conversation. Like, even people are trying to date right now, right? Obviously consent and permission and all those other things are so much bigger and better understood concepts and terms now. And I remember asking my wife this. I go, so is the idea then that if somebody dates now, like, they ask for permission at every single step of the way? Like, do we have to kind of break down every part of the process? And she said, I think it really depends on the interaction, but what ends up happening is you definitely have to find a way to communicate consent in a much clearer way. So maybe, yes, before you ever kiss somebody for the first time, you ask. But what you just brought up that is really powerful and interesting to me, and I think something that we just haven't done, speaks back to that idea of feeling awkward and feeling worthless and trying to fill ourselves up with other people's needs.
Yeah.
If we can do more of that self-work, then maybe you can walk up to somebody where you have the self-worth and say, hey, I'm really attracted to you. Mm-hmm. Is there something here? Do you want to go out and get coffee and drink? Versus like the one-liner or the fucking hook, all those crazy things that are really meant to slightly manipulate somebody else into saying, hey, let's go grab a drink. There is something really powerful. I'll call it BDE, but like it could be male or female can present it, right? Like about owning who you are and walking into a situation and say, hey, I feel like there's something here. And being totally okay, right? Take ego out of it, being totally okay with the other person saying, look, hey, no, actually, I'm totally not available, not here for it. Thanks, have a great day.
But when it's that clear, that's where people get to heal. When it's the cloudiness, it's the secrets, it's the not authentic of somebody. That's where things get convoluted, where you're like, wait, this person acts like they're going to show up for me, and then they disappear, they ghost, they then act a different way. It's that really messes with humans. Like, we need to just have accountability and say, hey, I'm getting this vibe from you. Are you interested? And they're like, no, I'm actually married. Be like, okay, well, you probably shouldn't flirt with somebody then, like, if you're not available. Or
no, again, if we
if we just take accountability.
Although, and tell me if this is okay to dig into.
Yeah.
If it's about accountability, then couldn't we have actually just even projected that the other person was flirting with us? Like, it could have been us looking for a look, or sometimes I feel like somebody is just literally being nice to you. And this has happened, I'm sure in the past, it's happened to me on both sides, both receiving and giving, where somebody is being nice to you, but if the person has a need or a want that feels like it's being fulfilled by that interaction, they can easily project onto it. So I love what you were saying, but I wonder if there's a place to just go, hey, are you interested? And they go, no, I'm married. You go, all right, cool. And then like, let them have their accountability while I hold on to mine.
Totally. But here's the thing I have to tell you. When I gave up flirting and intriguing, and if you're listening, intriguing is just extended more flirting. It's like a deeper level. Like, you're showing you're available, you're acting like it, but you're really not. So that's what intriguing is. Some people don't know what that means, but so I used to, the day my sponsor gave me, you cannot flirt, you cannot intrigue. And another one of my bottom lines, couldn't have any guy friends. I had to get rid of all my guy friends. I didn't talk, email, or text any men whatsoever, which means I would go to a restaurant and be looking down at the menu and order while not looking at the waiter. Like, I couldn't make eye contact. And it really happened one day. I shared at a meeting, and I went to an In-N-Out burger, and this 15-year-old kid took my order at the window. And when he saw me, he goes, he got like, he was attracted to me. And I'm shit you not, it was like heroin shot up my entire body, and the power and control I felt over this 15-year-old pimply kid. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be wanting this power and control the rest of my life. And the reason I talk about that is because 11 years later, nobody flirts with me. And when that was a bottom line, I thought my life is going to be so boring. Flirting is the best part of life. Like, just like, it's my personality. This is who I am. And nobody flirts with me anymore. It's because I'm so secure in myself that I don't give off that energy.
Right. So here's the beautiful, and I'm glad you took us all the way to the end of that story, because here's the thing, right? Because you were saying before, are you available? No. Okay, then maybe flirting is not, maybe don't flirt with people then. Mm-hmm. So much of that feeling, the charge, is about us. And you're right. It's funny. Social media.
It is about us. I just said that the other day. You could have put a bag over someone's head. It wasn't about them. It was about what they mirrored back to me, what I needed.
So it's funny. I have a lot of friends who are on social media too, and like have followers and whatnot, and they get hit up by like girls or whatever on Instagram. And I swear, and this is radical transparency, I've had the thought before. I'm like, shit, I'd never get that stuff. Why is that? That's so weird. And the part of myself that is still not perfectly comfortable with who I am as a human being has that thought of like, what's off with me? What's wrong?
Why am I not getting these sexy DMs?
100%. And then it dawns on me, I'm like, oh, because I'm not on there to do this at all. And so I'm not giving off an energy like that would be received.
Exactly.
And that's a very humbling, strange realization for somebody who years ago would have been constantly looking for that, which means I'd be also DMing other people. Like there'd be a lot of that back and forth. And so, you know, it's funny, I say this thing, and this totally speaks to my concept of addiction. But I said, look, anybody can beat their struggle with addiction. You just have to become somebody who's not addicted. And a lot of people, when they hear me saying that the first time, they're like, that sounds stupid though. You can't be that. And what you just spoke to is exactly what I mean. And I think this works with drugs and alcohol as well, but it certainly has to work with things like food and sex addiction, because you're not giving up sex and food. That's not a life you want to live.
Progressive brain disease. It's not chemicals.
It's not just that it's not chemicals. It's also like, look,
you have to live with it. It's not.
The brain is involved. Disease. But our brain is really powerful. Like our brain can change in massive ways. And the woman you just described in and out however many years ago, and the woman you describe now, they're two kind of different women, right?
Because I have the tools now.
You've become somebody different.
Yeah. Or I become to who I used to be, where I didn't need the world to fill me. I have tools now. But listen, you know, sometimes people look at me or something. I still want to get high off people. I'm forever going to be an addict. I actually don't believe you can stop being an addict. There's something in us. If we don't use our tools, if we don't use what we've learned. My addict is in the corner right now doing push-ups. If I don't work my program, if I don't show up for myself, if I don't show up for my partner, if I'm not brutally honest, if I'm not authentic, if I'm not being of service, if I'm not turning my will and my life over to care of God, then I will be acting out in a week, 2 weeks. Like it will be those little things, those like, oh, just smiling to this person, or, you know, wanting a job to fix me or something, you know, especially in Hollywood, it's all about the outside instead of the inside. The moment I stop working on my inside, I'm doomed. I will forever be an addict.
So again, I use very different language, and it's all good. We all get to have our own recovery. I think that's true for everybody. I think that people in general, if they stop working on themselves, they end up sinking into their unhealthy coping, and they end up fucking up at some point. And I definitely, like, for me, self-growth and ongoing, I definitely being of service by doing things like this and by running the recovery program, or I run and things like that, I do all day. But because of that, I don't see us even as different. I see us all as kind of beings on some continuum. And the more self-work and growth you do, the closer you get to normal. And the moment you stop, even though I hate the fucking word normal anyway. But,
I know. There's no such thing as normal.
And the moment you stop doing the work, you start going back into being unhealthy. And it's like, it's this constant back and forth. And maybe there is a line you cross, but in my opinion, that line matters less. I know what it looks like when I do no self-growth and no personal work. It's shitty, and I never want to get back there again. And so my job in life now is to just kind of figure out, how do I get as far away from that place? And it almost always has to do with having interesting conversations like this, and continuing to do the work to become a better and better version of myself.
100%. Because if we even normies or stop working on our inner growth, we will go back to those old coping mechanisms, because we're not developing, we're not, you know, getting those tools, those things like, oh, I'm having this feeling and I don't want to feel feelings, but feelings are meant to be felt. You know, we're meant to have bad days, you know, all that toxic positivity all the time. You're meant to have bad days. You're meant to feel you're sad, and you let it go, and you don't hold it in your body, and you go through those feelings and you funnel it out. And then you grow from that pain. And I think people are so scared of growing from pain, but that's what the beauty is. Like, I am so grateful I hit a bottom and almost destroyed my life 11 years ago. I was this close. I remember sitting in a hotel room, and I talk about it in the book, and being like, oh my God, am I going to do this again? Am I going to blow up my life? Am I going to be on my deathbed at 70? Never connected fully to another soul. That to me was more tragic than, you know, going through. I couldn't do it anymore. I was sick and tired. And I think we have to get to a point where, Do you hate looking at yourself in a mirror? Are you always looking outside of yourself to make yourself complete? Are you picking up that drugs and alcohol because your relationship is bad?
100%.
I mean, I talk at a ton of recovery centers, and the number one thing people lose their sobriety over is relationships. And I think we have to talk about it.
Yes.
That's what, and I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people who can be sober for years and are essentially acting out sexually all the time in order to fill what they used to get from alcohol and drugs. I think that's a really, really important point.
Well, they say that AA is the last house on the block, and that SLAW, they call it SLAW, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, the 12-step program, is the shack in the back that nobody ever wants to come to. I mean, we had a guy come in with 35 years in AA, and he was like, I have not come into these rooms because I just didn't want to do this work. And it's brutal, but it's the best thing I've ever done for myself. And I just want to share my experience, strength, and hope, especially as a woman.
Yeah, it's so true. I love it. Thank you so much for jumping on here. Thanks for being willing to have the weird conversations with me. It really kind of blows my mind how similar the stories are in the timelines. It's really kind of funny.
I know.
Congratulations on all your time. Congratulations on the marriage. Love the work. Where can people find you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at the Brianne Davis, or you can go to Secret Life Novel. I have a book that just hit bestseller 3 times. It's called Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. It's on Amazon, and it's worldwide pretty much in 2 weeks. And I just did the Audible, which was horrible, to act out all the worst moments you've ever imagined. So the book is about, the first year of recovery in Hollywood, being an working actress and what that looks like, and trying to help people understand this disease in a very entertaining, not academic, not clinical way. So go Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict on Amazon, or my podcast, Secret Life.
Love it.
Thank you so much. It was such an awesome. Tell your wife I said hello, by the way.
I will, absolutely. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Enjoy. And everybody, thanks for listening. Don't forget what I always ask you: take a screenshot right now, tag Brianne and me and Ignited, and just let us know what really resonated and what felt like it connected for you, and what you're going to do with it. Thank you. Have a great day. For the rest of those of you out at home, have the best week. Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful, and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.